Welcome to Economy Made Simple. I am Shamubeel Eaqub, the Chief Economist at Simplicity. There's a lot going on in the world right now, and I'm here to make sense of it. Brought to you by Simplicity, New Zealand's non-profit KiwiSaver and fund manager, who are on a mission to make Kiwis richer and smarter with money. Hello and welcome to Economy Made Simple. My name is Shamubeel Eaqub, and I'm the Chief Economist at Simplicity. Today, I want to give you a short explainer on government finances. There is so much jargon. I want to unpack just a few so we can understand what the media is talking about and what the government's talking about. When it comes to government finances, we talk about four big things. One of them is around taxes, and the other side of that is spending. We also talk a lot about investment and debt. These are pairwise things, but they're quite often all conflated into one. I want to take you through today each of these in turn and how they fit together. Some years ago, I said, taxes love, and it made some people very angry. And they said, no, tax is rapacious. We pay a lot of taxes in this country, roughly about $130 billion. And the reason we pay those taxes is we bring our resources together so we're able to pay for the things that we want collectively as a country. When it comes to our taxes, the biggest amount of taxes that we pay are in income taxes. You'll see this at the end of your fortnight when you get your pay packet. It's been taken away and goes straight to the IRD. The second biggest amount of taxes that we pay is on GST. Every time you go to the shop or buy something, you're paying 15%, and that is goods and services tax. We also pay taxes on interest that we earn on our savings, the dividends that we get paid, and also we pay a whole bunch of sin taxes, the excise duties on tobacco and alcohol. Those are all sources of revenue for government. The government also collects money from corporates on their profits and from things like ACC levies, ETS charges, and those kinds of things. Those are fairly small parts. New Zealand is not a high taxing country. Across the OECD, the club of rich countries around the world, we're about the middle. But we have expectations that we're going to have public services that are extraordinarily good. We want a health system that's amazing. We want an education system that's amazing. And we want to be able to pay for everything. Unfortunately, it's not easy. If we want to have good services, we need to have revenue and borrowing that's able to pay for it. When it comes to the OECD countries, we are a little bit different in that we tend to pay a lot more taxes on our labor, on our work, than other countries. In most other places, the charges that you pay for things like social welfare, for retirement, these things are far more explicit. Rather than being taken out as taxes, they're taken out as direct levies, so you can see where your money is going. When it comes to the economics of taxes, the reality is taxes are a distortion because they create an increase in cost of doing things. But they can be a good thing if that money that we have collected as taxes are used on things that we want and that make us better off as a country and as a society. When we raise taxes, the idea is to spend it on things that we want. And these are the kind of running costs, right? It's like when we go to work, we earn money and we spend it on servicing our mortgage, paying for the utilities, paying for food, and those kinds of things. Those are the running costs of a household. Similarly, the government has running costs of a government. The biggest item that they spend money on is welfare. And that is everything from New Zealand superannuation, which is welfare, followed by things like support for people who are unemployed and those bits and pieces. We spend a lot of money on health and education. Incidentally, you might be interested to know that we spend more money on New Zealand superannuation, that is welfare for older people, than we do for the education of our young people in New Zealand. We spend a lot of money on things like law and order, on making sure we have transport, that we have regulatory services, our legal system works well, and those kinds of things. So the government does a lot of different things to be able to give us direct services to us, but also to make sure the wider infrastructure of government and way of life works. But the government doesn't just spend money on things that we want in services. It also makes investments that last a long time. So a huge amount of government's activities is around building roads, bridges, making sure we have water infrastructure and those kinds of things, whether it's central government or local government. And those investments are very, very long term. And what that means is that we don't need to pay for that necessarily out of taxes, but we can borrow money against it because we're able to spread the cost of that, the ability to repay that over a long period of time. So when it comes to what we invest in, it's like how we do it in a household. We borrow a mortgage to be able to pay it over a long period of time. It's a big outlay that we spread the cost and the benefits over the years that come. Government is unique in that when it borrows money, it's not limited by one person's lifetime or their working life. Because there will be other generations that will come in the future, they can take a much longer term, much longer view of how to spend and how to borrow money. So, for example, when we build a really big piece of infrastructure, for example, a big bridge that crosses, say, the harbour in Auckland, those kinds of assets might hang around for 100 years. So we're really able to pay off those kinds of very large investments over a long period of time. We hear a lot about government borrowing, how it's going out of control. I think it's really important we ask ourselves not only how much are we borrowing, but what are we borrowing for? If you borrow money to create investments that are good for New Zealand, that's fine. But if you are borrowing money to be able to pay off your running costs, that's a problem. This is like you and I using a credit card and using a mortgage to be able to pay for things that are frivolities. It doesn't make sense to be borrowing money from your mortgage to be able to pay for your food. You want to be able to afford those things out of your running costs. Over the course of the last 10 years, we have seen increasing use of government borrowing for everyday spending. Partly it was because of crises. We had the pandemic, we've had natural disasters. There's always a reason for us to be able to borrow money, but we have to be able to pay it back. If we don't, what happens is when there is a new crisis or when there is new infrastructure that we want to buy, then we hear the refrain, we can't possibly afford to borrow more money to be able to do this. This is a really big problem for New Zealand because we have an infrastructure deficit that's in the hundreds of billions of dollars. We need to invest, and we need to invest significantly in infrastructure that will make New Zealand go better and faster. That is what debt is for. When we hear that New Zealand has too much debt, I would like you to ask, where is it that the debt is not right? Is it because we have borrowed money for the kinds of things that don't make New Zealand better off? Or is it because we have borrowed money to invest in infrastructure that makes New Zealand better? The New Zealand government has currently nearly $280 billion of debt. Most of that is for assets that we have, mainly around infrastructure, land, buildings, those kinds of things. It's when we start borrowing money to be able to afford short-term things like tax cuts, like being able to pay wages and those other things, that's when the problem becomes acute. This is the risk that New Zealand runs, is we mix up those two different things, the day-to-day running of government versus the long-term investment for future generations that will cost and benefit over a long period of time. When it comes to government finances, there are four things we want to talk about. Taxes that fund spending and debt that funds investment. But in each of those things, there are trade-offs. We know that when it comes to making good decisions, we have to choose between fast, cheap, or good. We can't have all three at the same time. It can be expensive, it can be slow, or it can be very poor quality. When it comes to those trade-offs, that's really what we're talking about. Unfortunately, a lot of the political conversation is talking about unicorns, that we're going to give you something that's fast, that's cheap, and that's really good quality. Those unicorns don't exist. The difficulty for the public and for the government and for the politicians to be able to have the difficult conversation is, what are we willing to give up? Do you want fewer services or worse services or more taxes and more borrowing for more services and better services? The trade-offs are really clear. This is not something that we can do without some cost. We have to make investments if we want results. We've talked a bit about government finances. The jargon quite often is mixing up deficits with debt and spending and taxes. But these things are pairwise. We want services that we want to pay taxes for. We want investments that should be paid out of debt. Being able to be clear about those ways of doing things in government are really critical. But also understanding that if we want better services or better infrastructure, there is a cost and there is a trade-off. Ultimately, in public finance, it's just like your finances. It's about making decisions that are sensible and are founded on good decision-making. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe. And if you think somebody else will enjoy it, please send it on to them. See you next time. Everything we cover in this session is for general information only. We are not tailoring our comments to your financial situation or providing financial advice or recommendations. This information and comments we provide are not intended to convey any guarantees as to the future performance of any investment products, asset classes, or capital markets. Past performance is no guarantee of future performance. Please refer to our full disclosure statement in the description.